welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie, I'm a full-time sketchbook artist, and today I'm going to be doing a full flip through of my finished mixed media sketchbook. So if you are new to my channel, then I film these in two halves, so I always do half and half. 6 months ago I filmed the part 1, and we are now 6 months later and I finished. So I actually finished this mid-December because I did a December daily challenge. I've done a flip through of all the work I've created for that on my Patreon, but you'll see half of it today in this sketchbook. So the sketchbook I use are the Royal Talens Art Creation sketchbook. If you've seen my ranking sketchbooks video, which I'll leave linked up in the cards and down below, it's my most used, it's the daily driver that I reach for the most because it does handle a whole heap of mediums and it's very, very affordable. The light is going in and out today, so apologies for that, but I hope you find this video helpful. There's going to be lots of inspiration and ideas, so hopefully you'll get a few prompts or ideas for materials too. So let's pick up where we left off last time, which was on this spread from the bindweed. So I do use a range of mixed media in here, but let's start here. So this was in July, so generally I would say it takes me about a year to fill a sketchbook because I do use quite a few of them, and that often changes depending on my mediums. So this was done with a gel plate, so just a really simple background that I printed on with that in one colour, and then I worked on top using some coloured pencils. Lots of experiments with texture here and mark making, and I'm really happy with these sweet badges. I think they work really well, and it was nice to use both the dark and the light colours to show up on this darker background. This was from a session on my Patreon with my friend Beth Spencer, where we did a joint session drawing owls. I really love drawing owls. We did quite a few quick timers for that one, and usually when I am working to fast timers I'll reach for brush pens and acrylic markers, which is what I've done here, and finished off with some coloured pencils. These are some of my favourites from the year. I loved these owls, again from the same session, and again using brush pens and coloured pencils. I did smudge them a little bit. I don't know if I use Neocolours here, probably, because I can see I've wetted it. But I really like these, and I like the orientation and composition of these too. This one was fun. This was a nighttime scene. More owls from that session. Got this cute little owlet down here. This one's using the acrylic mark in the background and then some different brown shades of brush pens here. So I use Ecolines and Tombos usually. This was from a Patreon theme where I did Nocturnal Month. So this was really fun. I really enjoyed doing night scenes, and this again I used acrylic for the background, did lots of splatters on top. This was from a drawing session on Zoom where I do share my process during this session as well and share the references on screen for us to all draw them together. Trying to focus on glow. I did a few things in my other sketchbooks too. This is probably my least favourite, but it was a really good starting point for me. This was a fun one. This was when I was using the Sailor Fude fountain pen, so the fountain pen that has the 55-degree angle, and also watercolours. So you do have to be careful in these sketchbooks of using a lot of water, but it handled this pretty well because I was quite careful with it, and I just used waterproof ink and then the watercolour went on top. I'll leave a link up here because I did do a video where I was using waterproof ink and watercolours when I was drawing some scenes from, I think, Barcelona. So I'll leave that in the cards, but this was the same technique. I really love this. So obviously this is a copy of an illustration by E.H. Shepard of Winnie the Pooh. You've got a little kanga here, it's so cute. I really want to do more of these, and I did plan on coming back and filling this spread, but I never did. And you can see some of my media here showing through. So sometimes depending on the mediums, this paper won't handle it that great. This was because I did 2 layers of brush pen. So when I am using brush pens, I am quite careful with it. And obviously I went quite heavy-handed here when I was doing some colour palette tests. So again, this is still the same month on Patreon, so this was in July when I was testing different colour palettes. And we did this again on a Zoom drawing session. So actually the other one must have been from YouTube. So we do YouTube live streams and Zoom sessions as well. Really love this one. It was a bit different using this green as a base, but I really like how it turned out, and then changing the background to be a night scene for this sweet little hedgehog here. Same session again, 30 minutes for these owls. I really do like drawing owls. You'll see there's another one in the sketchbook as well, I think. But obviously we were doing Nocturnal Month, so it makes sense to do lots of nocturnal animals. Again, trying to focus on texture. I'm surprised this took me 30 minutes. It looks a little bit undone for that, but I do like some of the textures. same session, maybe. I think this was the same session, so we placed this fox here into the scene. And this is a very different colour palette to normal, and I really like it. It feels quite ethereal, I say, and a bit dreamlike with the pinks and the purples. So a very different colour palette for me, but it was really fun to experiment on that month. And I like this tree as well, and the little fox sitting there. Same month, again using jelly plate background, so I printed that on first. There was a Patreon video for these two, so I filmed that for the main video that month. And again, as I did with the badges, I put down the print first and then went on top with just coloured pencils and some near colours. So pretty simple with the supplies, but quite effective, especially for some of the glows. And here, using only, I was going to say 2 colours. There's quite a range of swatches down here. We've got the black and the greys, and then a white and a blue. But I really like this, just having that simplicity of the really dark background and working on top. We've got another single spread here. I did film this one. This was using the Derwent drawing pencils when I first got those, so this would have been just after my birthday. And I really like this. This was referenced from a photo I took whilst in Japan, and it just gives such a nice vibe because they are such a lovely muted colour palette set. And as I said, the process for this one is on YouTube. I prefer working over double page spreads because I don't get left with individual pages like this. I generally will create more double page spreads. So for example, the next one is, and then I forget to come back when I'm doing a single. So I really need to get better with that this year. But yeah, this one is the next one. So this is a river scene from Emma Carlisle's Patreon. She shared this reference. I was playing around with lots of different mixed media here. So I know there's some acrylic ink, watercolour ink, coloured pencils, near colours, acrylic paint back here too. So just a really fun one. I really like this one. It didn't do that great on Instagram, but the ones I love never usually do. It's always the opposite. But I like the lighting here. I think I captured the forest really nicely, especially pushing it back into the distance and then having the lighting on the water. An unfinished one. This was referenced from my friend TJ Marston's Patreon. She'd gone to Hawaii and shared some of her pictures. I didn't finish it. I had planned on doing some figures here, but sometimes I do the first layer and I do move on if it takes too long to dry. Now I do have a hairdryer, so I can speed up that process, but I just never finished with this one. But you can see the base layer, so it might be helpful to see anyway. Usually I would come in with coloured pencils and near colours on top, but this looks like it's just acrylic ink and maybe some watercolour. Then I went to Bristol on the train in August, so I just did these whilst on the train. I didn't do anything else that trip. I had planned to. Again, we've got another blank page here, which is a shame, but I like doing these. Obviously, we were going really fast on the train, so it was hard to A, take pictures, and B, to reference them. So a lot of these are kind of made up just from what I could see glimpsing out the window, but I used brush pens for these and some coloured pencils. This was from the live stream that I did back in August. So the end of August, we reached 75k on Instagram and 15k here on YouTube. So I did a live stream to celebrate, and I really like this one. If you want to see this come to life and watch the live stream, that's on the live tab here on YouTube. But I really like this. It feels very colourful and summery. Really like some of these colours here from this view. I think this was Oxford, and then filling the gap with this little flower study with brush pens and some near colours. A cormorant, I really like this. This was when I was playing around with the graphite blocks. This was just quite a quick one. I have got a video about the graphite blocks here on YouTube. Again, I'll link it up above. Most of these spreads will be linked to either my Patreon or YouTube. So you might be able to see the process for a lot of these. This one I didn't film. I remember doing this in the evening, just playing around with it. And I really loved it. I really like some of the textures here. Then we've got this one. I really like this. This is something I want to do more of. I'd love to be able to do this plein air as well. Sadly, we don't have quite as much of a beautiful coastline here than they do in Cornwall and Devon, where this was referenced. But I would like to do more plein air work in the forest, and I really want to try and do lots of textures like this. So I scribbled on with a really scrubby brush to get some of these marks, and then I went on top with the Derwent ink tents, which I really like. I think some of this is acrylic ink, and then layered on top with loads of different mediums. I just really like the energy on this one. It's definitely the work I would like to create more of. Then we did a water month on Patreon. We actually extended that from August into September too, because we enjoyed it so much. And someone shared some references from a book in our community chat, and I loved it, so I wanted to draw it. Really proud of the sky here, and I really like the depth of the water here with the dark tones. We've got the coral and lots of different fish. I really enjoyed painting this one. It did take quite a while, longer than normal, but I think it was worth it. This spread was also for YouTube. This was when I was testing out some pastel pencils, I think. I think I did a haul and got a few different supplies. So I'm pretty sure there was some Albrecht Dürer aquarelle sticks as well. Again, I'll leave the video linked up in the cards. I don't like this spread. It doesn't feel very me. It's a little bit muted and it's a bit boring. But it was really helpful because I do love testing new supplies, and I find the easiest way to work out how to use them is to use them. So it was really helpful for me to just play about with the different layering and exactly how I could use them in my work. Then I did a Patreon drawing session. Because it was water themed, we actually went above the water and did some boats, and I really love this spread. I'm really happy with it. Really love these bright colours and just making the boats a bit more cartoony and a bit more stylized. So really like these. The angle maybe isn't quite right on this boat here, but I love doing these, and I think I would like to do more this year too. Just a random spread here, some random girls. I think that was from the same session, just doing like a warm down. This guy is definitely not my favourite bird I've ever drawn, but I like these two. And then this was from a session with Mel Chadwick and Helen Stark, and I just did a few of their references. I really liked the flower pots, then I did some chard and these apples. These were all done with brush pens and then a little bit of coloured pencil on top. So I didn't do many references in that session, but I just filled this spread. Finally did a double page spread with 2 single pages from different sessions, so that was a nice way to fill this one. This was again following a session on Mel Chadwick's Substack, so I'll leave a link to everything I'm mentioning down below. But Mel often puts a base layer down of colour, usually this sort of warm ochre colour. So this doesn't feel like me, it definitely feels more Mel, but that's because I was following one of her videos. And I went on top with some Derwent ink tints and lots of near colour. And this is a reference from down in Cornwall. And then this is linked with the water theme, again not finished. So there are things in my sketchbook that don't get finished and don't get shown on YouTube. This is definitely one of them. I did start going on top with my coloured pencils. It doesn't need much to finish it, just a couple of eyes here on the fish and things. But it wasn't quite what I was envisioning, so I didn't finish it in the end, and that's fine. Our sketchbooks are a work in progress. It's okay to A, not like everything we create, and B, to leave things unfinished. Then I did a Coffees for Gaza session, so this was in October. Really loved this reference. It was a really nice hour just chatting and drawing from the reference that was shared and hearing stories. So I don't often draw people in my work, but I'm really pleased with the stylization here, and I just really like how it came together with all the little details. I love drawing through and adding all these bright colours in. And then we jump into November. I just did a very quick sketch of these carnations. So this was drawn from life. This was an observational piece. I had some on my desk because we were doing Botanical Month. They hadn't bloomed, so they're still mostly in bud, but I used the Albrecht Dürer watercolour pencils and a blue polychromos just to play around with the watercolour pencils and just add a little bit of water into there as well. Again, same month, so Botanical Month. I wanted to try using more acrylic paint, so this was an experiment with that. I really love the textures. I do enjoy using acrylics, but it's not something I often reach for, but definitely something I want to do more of because, as I said, the textures are really fun to play with. And this didn't look like the reference I was using from Pexels, but I love the end result. I really like the difference with the warm greens and the cooler greens too. Then I did a session with my friend TJ, so I've mentioned it a few times on this channel, but I am doing my very first mixed media art retreat with my friend TJ in Portugal in May. There's only a couple of spaces left, so I do recommend, if you are interested, of clicking the link down below. I will leave all the information there, but we decided to do a Zoom session where we talked about the retreat and shared a little bit more about what we'll be teaching, and we were drawing at the same time, so we shared the references on screen. This was our first 5-minute warm-up. Again with brush pens, which is always my go-to when I want to work quick, and some acrylic markers. And with this one, TJ and I were sort of shouting out when to change materials. So I wouldn't normally put this pink in, but TJ had said to change to pink, and then I changed it to orange, and it worked like that. So we get on really, really well. Our work is very different, but we do create quite similarly, and we're very playful, and it's all about experimenting. So this session was definitely that, and it was really, really fun. So quite collaborative. And then I also did this one. This was using 2 mediums. I used brush pens / markers because I kind of forgot, and then some coloured pencils on top. Very fast again. I didn't write the time on here, but I can see that my movement was quite fast, and it does create nice energy. And I think, yeah, the other ones were all in another sketchbook, so maybe I'll do a tour when I finish that one. And then we're into December. So I filled the rest of this sketchbook with a personal daily art challenge that I did in December, and I finished the sketchbook before I finished that daily challenge, which means I've moved into my new one. But it's a really nice way to really commit myself and to actually give myself time to create art, because I'm quite busy with work stuff, admin, editing, and so oftentimes I don't actually create as much as I'd like. So that was my personal goal for that daily art challenge, and I'm really pleased that I did it. I only missed 2 days in the end, but I'm still really chuffed with that. And I'm going to be doing a new daily challenge in February, starting on February the 5th. So I'll be sharing a little bit more about that on Instagram and later on in the month here on YouTube. But if you'd like to join me, it will be a public thing because it's in the run up to my book publication for Sketchbook Joy. And this is out in March. So I'm going to be doing a daily art challenge just in the lead up and share more about the book and just to create with you and really encourage you to find your own sketchbook joy. So I'm really excited about that. But back to December, so this was the first. I really like this, I like the energy. Put down a huge amount of marks. I actually did this late at night because on the very first day, it got to like 10 p.m. and I still hadn't created. So it was a great start, but I did it. So I prepped the background with loads of gouache, some acrylic markers and some brush pens. And then I took up a white Neocolor and a dark indigo pencil and I just drew on top in bed. And I really like it. I think it's quite effective and I liked playing around with the stars in the sky here. Again, something unfinished, that's fine. I was playing around with warm light and just going a little bit softer with my marks here, which I think worked quite nicely. So some pan pastel and some colour pencils, that's it for this one. And then some watercolour. So this was when I got my Kuretake, I think it's the 48 pan set. Again, I'll leave a link for that video in the cards if I've got enough space. I tend to try and link too many things, but it will always be in the description. It's a little bit unfinished, but because it was such a busy month, I didn't have a load of time, but I still wanted to create. So a lot of these were created quite quickly. But the main thing that I wanted to do was to actually create art despite that. And I found time for it. So it has proven to me that I can make time for art. I just need to prioritize it, even if it is 5 minutes. This one was probably about 10 minutes. Again, it is a little bit messy and dirty, but I put down some acrylic. I really love this mark making here in the sky, and then I went on top with some coloured pencils using Derwent ink tints, and I think that worked really nicely because I really like the texture here from that wet pencil, which I dipped in water and then applied straight to the page. Then I did a session on Emma Carlisle's Patreon doing these snowy animals. These were really fun, I really enjoyed them. I stuck to 3 and 5 minute timers for each of these. So I've labelled them with their timers, but they were really fun. I tried to stick to similar colour palettes. I don't often draw rabbits, so they were a little bit tricky for me. I much prefer drawing the birds, so the owl and the robin came a little bit easier for me. And then the squirrels turned out great considering I don't think I've drawn a squirrel before. But yeah, really fun, and I really liked adding on the wintry vibes with the light cobalt blue and the white Neocolors. This one, very not wintry, pretty autumnal this one. This was from a Morten Hilmer live stream. So he has a nature webcam and these birds had come to visit that day, so I decided to draw the scene using brush pens, coloured pencils, and then here in the background to create this softness, I applied some soft pastel, and I think that works really nicely. It adds a warmth to the image and then pushes this back, and it also hides some of the scribbly marks where you overlay brush pens on top. If you want to hide that texture, pan pastel and soft pastel works really well. And I really like that. And then I kind of defined the birds a little bit more by using a dark indigo pencil and really trying to prioritize their colours. And yeah, brush pens for that with some Neocolors too. This is a bit different for me. I used some calligraphy pens, so just some simple black calligraphy pens. This is not very me, and it is out my comfort zone, but I'm pleased I did it. I'm excited to try a little bit more with it and just play with line. I prefer this one here, but it's just something that I think we need to experiment with. It's always fun to try new supplies, whether we like the result or not. I think it's still, adds into our creative process, even if we're not aware, and even if we don't use that medium again, it will come in further down the line. I think everything comes together when we create, whether we like it or not. So yeah, these were drawn from references I took in Prague last year when I visited with my sister. Then I did this one. Again, you can see the gel plate here. I really love this gradient. Quite a simple one with a white Posca on top and then a dark indigo pencil. And then some colour palette tests. So I did a Patreon live stream where we weren't allowed to use white. So this was a YouTube live stream and this was really, really fun. I found it really interesting, and although the art I created, which was this, is in my other sketchbook, this was like my prep page where I was just testing it out beforehand, and it worked great. We don't have to use white for snowy scenes, and it was definitely a challenge, but it worked out really well. The next page was this landscape, which is probably my favourite and one of the quickest that I did that month. Again, I prepped the page with acrylic gouache and acrylic marker, and then I went on top with some Neocolours and that dark indigo pencil again, and some little stars in the sky with a white Posca. I really think this is quite effective and I like the colours. I kind of made the reference work because I put down the colours first and then I kind of carved it out with the Neocolours, and I think that works really nicely, and I just really like the vibes on this one. Something again a bit different for me, I drew these Arctic foxes. I think these worked out great. I really like them, especially because I don't draw animals very often. I was really trying to push myself with this one, and especially dogs and foxes I do find tricky. But I think these turned out really nicely. I do want to try and push myself a little bit more this year, but I kept this simple with some coloured pencils and then used my light blue acrylic marker around them just to add to that snowy vibe. This one was created using a colour palette that I created by bundling some supplies at the beginning of the month. Our theme for the month was winter colour palettes, so this is very different for me in terms of the colours I created with, and a bit basic, but very fun. I really enjoyed using this jade green with the pink. And yeah, just a quick one, but I think it was still helpful for me to create. Then I did this page, so this was the 15th and the 16th of December, so 2 separate days because like I said, I didn't have a huge amount of time. This was a study from a book illustrated by Isabelle Arsenault, so this isn't my own work. I did do a study of this one, and then I used that to create this piece, which is my own work, using a Pexels reference. But you can definitely see the inspiration, and I really like it. I liked using the 2 colour palette, so definitely utilising the white page underneath, and then going on top with acrylic marker, which I did here, and a coloured pencil. So I wouldn't create prints of this. This is obviously inspired heavily by Isabelle Arsenault, but I do really enjoy working in that way and getting inspiration from other artists. Then we've got this spread, again the 17th and 18th, so I was working on single pages here quite a lot because I didn't have the time. This was acrylic marker, I think some acrylic gouache, some ink, and some coloured pencils. Again, we've got another owl there. And then this one was using my watercolours and some coloured pencils on top. So quite a simple one in terms of the mediums, just watercolour and a bit of pencil, but I think quite effective, and I really enjoyed creating this tree. I do want to practice my trees this year. Then I did another session with Emma Carlisle. I didn't stay for the whole session, I just did 40 minutes, but we were putting hats on penguins, which was a fun one. It was Emma's birthday, and I did place them all together, so they were individual references, and I wanted to do one scene. I just think these have a lot of character, they're very fun. I had this gap down here, so I added on these baby penguins. It's just a really fun one. I definitely want to create more fun in my work, and I think this is the right vibe. Then we've got some swatches. So this was from my highlighter video that I did earlier this year. This was from a video earlier in December on Patreon where I was bundling up my supplies to create these different colour palettes, and then I used some of them. This one I definitely used, and this one earlier on in the sketchbook, but I tend to swatch at the back. So usually the last few pages of my sketchbook tours are just swatches and experiments. And here's some more. So this was when I was swatching some of the supplies and testing the layering. And that's it, that's the end of the sketchbook. So another Royal Talens completed, and it's very, very satisfying to flip through. I started on a daily art challenge back in January 2024, and I ended on a challenge in December. So a really nice way to fill a sketchbook. It did take me all year, but that's totally fine. I don't think there should be any time limit on our sketchbooks, so whether it takes you a year or 5 years, As long as you're creating in it, I think that's the main thing. A big thank you to my patrons. I did mention Patreon quite a lot because I do create a lot over there, but their support really helps me to create these videos here on YouTube for free. So a big thank you to them, and thank you to you for watching. I will see you next Sunday in a new YouTube video. See you later.